1909, daughter returns pregnant from the grave. Warning to the sensitive: what you are about to discover has permanently altered the lives of those who investigated this case. Researchers who studied these documents have developed unexplainable night terrors. This may be your only chance to learn secrets that have haunted investigators for decades. Without your immediate engagement, you will never again find documentaries about mysteries that challenge sanity itself. The algorithm permanently buries content that doesn't receive likes within minutes of publication. Chronicle of the Forbidden Mysteries Haunted Special Edition, 1909. Daughter returns pregnant from the grave. Terrifying discovery reveals experiments that defy nature. Exclusive investigation exposes medical conspiracy that haunts to this day. Narrated by Dr. Septimus Graves, pathologist who was never the same after these discoveries. Brave readers, prepare yourselves to discover truths that have disturbed investigators for generations. For years, whispered rumors in medical corridors spoke of experiments transforming innocent victims into living nightmares. What we have uncovered transcends the worst fears of human imagination. The case of Eleanor Wilson, a 19-year-old from Montgomery, Alabama, exposes a sinister conspiracy extending to the darkest circles of experimental medicine in 1909. This is not Gothic fiction. Every line has been verified through documents that should never have survived the passage of time. In 1909, while our society celebrated scientific progress, an organization known only as the Circle of Resurrection conducted experiments that transformed peaceful graves into nightmarish wombs of impossible life. Eleanor Wilson was chosen not by chance, but for characteristics that made her the perfect specimen for their sick obsessions with manipulating the boundary between life and death. Terrifying transformation documented in photographs. Confidential documents obtained through our investigation reveal that Dr. Augustus Blackwood, the sinister mind behind the operation, had developed substances that could forcibly reanimate deceased tissue through methods that defy modern science. Eleanor Wilson was subjected to injections that transformed a deceased woman into something that science cannot explain, a walking impossibility. Medical photographs, preserved in archives that librarians keep locked behind 7 keys, show a demonic progression, grave soil still clinging to her funeral gown as she was first documented in the laboratory, eyes that reflect no light yet somehow see, and most horrifyingly, a gradually expanding abdomen despite the obvious impossibility of conception after death. Sinister circle funded by cursed families. Our investigation has discovered that the circle received funding from industrial dynasties obsessed with the prospect of achieving immortality through profane science. Each experiment cost fortunes, paid for with the suffering of deceased subjects transformed into guinea pigs for diabolical ambitions. The rituals conducted combined experimental medicine with medieval occultism. Eleanor was kept in underground cells decorated with alchemical symbols, subjected to ceremonies that mixed medical procedures with Latin incantations that made blood freeze in the veins of even the most hardened observers. Corrupted authorities protect conspirators. Evidence reveals that municipal authorities, influential families, and corrupt members of the clergy were aware of the circle's sinister activities. Death records were falsified, families were silenced through dark threats, and any official investigation was systematically sabotaged by invisible forces working from the shadows. Dr. Morrison, a medical examiner who later developed night terrors, secretly documented impossible anatomical discrepancies, bodies that showed simultaneous signs of decomposition and regeneration, organs that functioned without blood flow, brains that registered activity without consciousness, physical evidence of manipulation that defies scientific explanation. Nightmares haunt investigators to this day. Every person who has investigated this case has developed unexplainable psychological disturbances. Margaret Thornfield, the librarian who discovered the archives, began experiencing vivid dreams of her own funeral after reading the documents. Dr. Blackthorne developed a paranoid obsession with checking his own pulse. Professor Crow refuses to enter cemeteries since he saw the photographs of Eleanor Wilson. Cursed archives reveal demonic methodology. Our investigation led us to the State Medical Archives, where we discovered evidence of systematic tampering suggesting supernatural intervention. Pages torn out with surgical precision impossible to human hands, stamps that changed color with the light, signatures that seemed to move when observed peripherally. The crucial discovery came through carbon copies that librarians swore were destroyed decades ago. These documents mysteriously appeared organized on our research desk one morning, as if invisible forces wanted the truth about Eleanor Wilson to be revealed. Blackwood's diaries written in ink that changes color. Dr. Augustus Blackwood maintained records in ink that transformed with the ambient temperature, revealing hidden texts when handled. His notes, written in archaic Latin mixed with alchemical symbols, describe procedures that defy both medicine and physics. Eleanor Wilson was identified in the records as postmortem specimen alpha, a designation that reduced a once-living woman to an object of resurrection experimentation. The selection criteria were disturbingly specific: recently deceased women with a family history of exceptional fertility, all buried during lunar eclipses, considered biologically malleable material. The reanimation essence, developed by Blackwood, combined radioactive elements with glandular extracts from preserved cadavers, creating a compound that the scientist believed could reverse the process of death in organisms. The injections were administered directly into the spinal cord during nighttime ceremonies. Photographs that haunt those who view them. The photographic series attached to the reports documents a transformation that haunts anyone who dares look at the images for more than a few seconds. The initial photographs show Eleanor Wilson as she appeared in her casket, peaceful in eternal repose. The subsequent images record a deterioration that seems to continue even after the photographer's death. First week, skin regains color as if blood once again flows beneath the surface. Second week, eyes open but reflect nothing, like black mirrors into emptiness. Third week, limbs move without purpose, as if controlled by forces not of this world. Fourth week, abdomen begins to expand in impossible pregnancy. The most disturbing aspect was that no consciousness returned to the reanimated body. Psychological records document Eleanor's eyes tracking movement without recognition, her mouth forming words without voice, creating an existential contradiction that tormented even the most hardened executors. National Network of Haunted Laboratories. Intercepted correspondence reveals that Blackwood did not operate in isolation. The Circle maintained a network of collaborators in at least 8 states, all conducting variations of the same experiments in laboratories that were subsequently abandoned due to unexplainable manifestations. Each laboratory received funding from local industrial groups, creating a national conspiracy of exploitation disguised as revolutionary resurrection research. The total number of victims may reach hundreds of deceased, all sacrificed on the altar of scientific ambition corrupted by obsession with conquering death itself. Financial records show that each experiment cost fortunes provided by families who subsequently suffered unexplainable generational curses, premature deaths, phantom pregnancies, dream-born children. As if participation in the conspiracy brought retribution from beyond the grave. Underground facilities where death behaves strangely. Eleanor was kept in an underground complex built 3 floors below the main hospital. Modern visitors report that timepieces stop functioning at the location, the dead flowers they bring to graves bloom temporarily after prolonged presence, and mirrors reflect versions of observers that appear deceased. The environment combined medical equipment with alchemical symbols engraved on copper plates that oxidize and restore cyclically. Temperature fluctuates independently of heating systems, and there are reports of whispers in dead languages echoing during the new moon. Transcendence of mortality through gestational reanimation, theory that haunts science. Technical documents reveal that experiments with Eleanor Wilson were part of a much more sinister and comprehensive project. The Circle had developed a pseudoscientific theory called transcendence of mortality through gestational reanimation, combining experimental medicine with occultism in a way that defies rational comprehension. The central hypothesis suggested that the process of human reproduction could be induced in deceased subjects through specific chemical and electrical stimulation, creating life that would carry characteristics of both the deceased and the otherworld. Blackwood believed he was creating bridges between realms through these unnatural pregnancies. Underground laboratory where death's laws are altered. Eleanor was kept in a specially constructed cell where physical laws seemed altered. Timepieces functioned at different speeds depending on location in the room, plants grew and died in accelerated cycles, and photographs revealed that images decomposed independently of the subjects photographed. The environment combined cutting-edge medical equipment with alchemical symbols that glowed with their own phosphorescence during experiments. Temperature was controlled not by thermostats, but by lunar phases, and lighting was provided by candles made with substances that made shadows move against the direction of light. During weekly rituals, Eleanor was positioned in the center of a circle engraved in the floor while Blackwood and assistants recited incantations that made the air vibrate with frequencies causing temporal disorientation. Simultaneously, the reanimated body was subjected to procedures that included drainage of spinal fluids and injections of radioactive substances. Development of impossible metaphysical capacities. Records document that Eleanor developed abilities that defy natural physics during experiments. Blackwood observed episodes where her body demonstrated knowledge of events beyond death, moved in ways that suggested influence from non-physical entities, and showed understanding of realms that should be inaccessible to the living. Most disturbing were the otherworldly manifestations recorded. Eleanor's body began to exhibit signs of pregnancy that developed at unnatural speed, as if something from beyond was using her reanimated form as a vessel to enter our world. Blackwood interpreted these manifestations as evidence that the experiments were expanding the boundaries between worlds. Existential horror documented in psychological reports. Medical photographs show Eleanor developing simultaneously characteristics of life and death, coloration returning to specific tissues while others continued decomposition, movement in limbs while rigor mortis persisted in others, fetal heartbeat detected while no pulse existed in the host body. It was a biological contradiction that transformed existence into a constant nightmare of impossibility. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, a nurse who later developed selective amnesia about the period, wrote in her diary, "Every night I hear sounds from Eleanor's chamber in the basement. They are not the cries of the dead nor the moans of the living, but lamentations of someone who exists in both states simultaneously." The ritual of gestational culmination, final cursed ceremony. The experiments reached their climax during a ceremony that Blackwood called the ritual of gestational culmination. During a procedure that extended over 3 consecutive nights, Eleanor was subjected to the final process, the attempted birth of what the scientist believed to be an entity conceived between realms. The goal was to facilitate the birth of a being that Blackwood theorized would contain elements of both our world and whatever lies beyond death. This entity would be studied and potentially used to develop methods of transcending mortality for the paying members of the Circle. The final medical records of Eleanor are too disturbing for complete description. The reanimated body, while technically deceased, attempted to give birth to something that defied categorization, neither fully human nor entirely other, a hybrid existence that should not have been possible. Supernatural consequences haunt participants. Professor Edmund Crowe, a specialist in historical secret societies, has developed a disturbing theory. The circle of resurrection was not merely manipulating biology, it was altering the barrier between life and death. The experiments may have created an anomaly that continues to affect anyone who investigates the case. Evidence of this theory: every investigator who has studied Eleanor Wilson's files has developed symptoms of inexplicable night terrors, dreams of their own funerals, and distorted perception of death itself. As if knowledge of the case caused contamination from beyond. Haunted survivors break decades of terrified silence. Our investigation has managed to locate 3 survivors who witnessed the events of 1909, all having developed psychological disturbances that persist decades later. Their accounts, collected in interviews that had to be interrupted multiple times due to episodes of panic, revealed details that no official document recorded. Martha Caldwell, nurse who never sleeps. Martha Caldwell, now appearing ancient at 84, was a young trainee during the period of the experiments. She received us only after we presented specific credentials, and kept all windows closed during the interview, claiming that daylight makes her remember what she saw. I was only 19, Martha recalled with a voice that oscillated between youthful timbre and ancient trembling, but I immediately realized that something was altering death in the hospital. There were corridors where flowers would wilt and bloom repeatedly, sounds of movements that seemed to come from both life and death simultaneously. Martha was the only person outside Blackwood's team who directly witnessed Eleanor during the reanimation transformation. One night, working beyond her hours, she accidentally witnessed the ritual through a basement window and was never the same again. What I saw changed not only my life, but my perception of death itself, she continued, her hands trembling with a rhythm that did not correspond to normal aging. Hooded men, candles burning with flames that moved against the wind, and in the center a dead woman who existed in multiple states simultaneously. Thomas Morrison, son of the cursed medical examiner. Thomas Morrison, 85 years old but appearing to have died and returned multiple times, inherited not only his father's secret notes but also a curse that affects the family's perception of death. Timepieces in his home function at different speeds, and old photographs show him aging in inconsistent patterns with areas of his face that appear deceased. My father knew that experiments were altering the local barrier between life and death. Thomas explained during an interview that simultaneously lasted 2 hours and 6 hours depending on which clock was consulted. He found bodies of the deceased with impossible characteristics. Dr. Morrison had secretly photographed victims, including Eleanor Wilson. Images show contradictions that persist decades later. When observed quickly, they show a normal deceased woman. When contemplated longer, they reveal signs of impossible life. When photographed again, they appear different with each development. My father suspected that Blackwood had discovered how to manipulate the boundary between worlds, Thomas added. He found evidence that deceased cells were reanimating independently of the body, as if each part existed in a different state between life and death. Hannah Bishop, survivor with fragmented memories between realms. The most devastating testimony came from Hannah Bishop, 92 chronological years, who appears different ages depending on illumination. As a morgue assistant, she was selected for the program but managed to escape before the final procedures, although not without permanent metaphysical consequences. Hannah still exhibits physical anomalies, skin that alternates between lifelike and cadaverous depending on the season, scars that appear and disappear, and her reflection in mirrors shows versions in different states of life and death. Her memories exist simultaneously in multiple realms. They kept us in cells where death functioned strangely, Hannah recalled in the presence of her grandson, who observed uneasily how her appearance changed during conversation. There were other bodies, perhaps 10 or 12. Eleanor Wilson was in the adjacent cell, and I heard not only her movements, but echoes of whatever realm she was partially inhabiting. Hannah described rituals where reanimated bodies were forced to participate in ceremonies that mixed medicine with manipulation of death itself. Men in white chose a different subject each night. When they took Eleanor, she returned existing in multiple states simultaneously. Eleanor Wilson's final moments, fragmented existence between realms. Hannah's most disturbing description involves Eleanor's final moments. She had become something that defies description, deceased yet moving, silent yet communicating, empty yet containing something growing within. One night I heard not only sounds coming from her cell, but echoes of realms beyond our comprehension happening simultaneously. Dr. Margaret Thornfield, who interviewed Hannah decades later using regressive hypnosis, confirmed authenticity through details that coincide with never-published documents. Hannah's memories show fragmentation between realms that persists to this day. She literally remembers things from beyond death. Metaphysical curse pursues investigators. All testimonies converge. Investigating Eleanor Wilson's case causes contamination between realms in researchers. Each person who studies the archives develops similar symptoms: distorted perception of death, irregular sleep patterns where they appear deceased, memories of events beyond life. It wasn't just a medical experiment, concluded Martha Caldwell, whose appearance visibly changed during our interview. It was a rupture in the barrier between life and death that continues affecting anyone who approaches the truth about what they did with that poor woman's body. Metaphysical curse remains active, investigation ends in terror. Our 2-year investigation has revealed truths that have not only shaken our sanity but altered our fundamental perception of the barrier between life and death. The Circle of Resurrection did not merely conduct experiments, it created an anomaly that persists, haunting anyone who dares investigate Eleanor Wilson's case. Dr. Augustus Blackwood never faced earthly justice. Records suggest that he may have discovered how to prolong existence indefinitely through manipulation of death itself, possibly existing today in an impossible state. Some investigators report sightings of a man matching his description, always appearing to be both alive and deceased simultaneously. Eleanor Wilson, existence that transcends death. Officially, Eleanor Wilson died in 1909. Unofficially, multiple witnesses report manifestations suggesting she may exist simultaneously in multiple realms. Visitors to the old hospital location describe encounters with a female figure that resembles Eleanor, always asking, "Do you know what grows in Death's Garden?" Location remains haunted by metaphysical anomaly. Today, the ruins of Montgomery General Hospital are avoided by local residents who report inexplicable phenomena: timepieces that function at different speeds, shadows that move against the direction of the sun, and whispers of voices that speak about births that make no sense. Dr. Septimus Graves, pathologist who was never the same after these discoveries. Final warning: this investigation ends here for reasons of personal sanity. Remaining files will be permanently sealed. We recommend that readers avoid investigating this case, as knowledge may cause irreversible contamination between realms. Temporal contamination possible. 3 investigators who studied this case have developed irregular aging patterns and unexplainable metaphysical disturbances. If this content does not receive massive engagement, algorithms will permanently bury revelations like these. Your interaction may be the last chance for others to discover these truths before they are lost forever.